So with long distance visitation, it really kind of depends on a case by case basis. The best case scenario is for the parents to communicate, if that is possible, and decide for themselves what's in the best interest of their children during this time. But you have to take into consideration, which states have hotspots going on. And when you say long distance, are you saying, a 3 hour car drive? Or are you talking about a cross country or out of the country airplane trip? There are very different opinions, and this is very much evolving. I think if air travel is required, you definitely need to check first with the carrier, and you need to be cognizant of what your local airport and the airport that your child is going to are doing. I don't really think that TSA is they're not taking temperatures, they're not implementing anything. But carrier by carrier, I know that Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, Delta, they've all been sending things out. I've gotten them just from my own frequent flyer status or whatever. But the major carriers are, they are taking steps to sanitize airplanes. There are fewer people on the airplanes. So the situation right now, and we're recording this on April the 18th, is very different from what it was in, say, mid to late March. There aren't a lot of travelers. People, for the most part, have gotten home and they're in their shelter in place. So they're not still abroad. They're not still traveling for spring break. And so the airlines, I think for the most part, or hopefully all of them, are using social distancing. They are sanitizing planes. They're taking steps. I wish TSA would do something, but I think what you have to consider is it more dangerous, for instance, for me to stay with my child in a hotel or two hotels along the way if it's a road trip, to stop for bathroom breaks and food breaks along the road, than it is to go through an airport and perhaps wear gloves, a mask, use hand sanitizer, and just be super, super careful when you get your baggage, for instance. Leave it in the car, spray it with Lysol, you take every step you can to make sure that you're being safe. And I think that's the best you can do. Jen, you're a first responder. I don't know if you have other tips.
I think the way we get back out, the more we read about this and learn about it, is to constantly wash our hands and stay appropriately distant from one another. So I would probably lean toward air travel, as frightening as that might seem right now, than getting in my car and trying to drive across the state or to another state. And we are located in Texas, so to get out of our state is 6 to 9 hours on average. And that's a lot of stops along the way to do that. So I would very much lean toward safe approach to air travel than and using a proper face mask and socially distancing. The gloves we've heard a lot and seen a lot about, do I wear gloves, do I not wear gloves? And if you remember in the beginning, there's a lot of controversy on, do I wear a mask or not wear a mask? And we can talk about that in another video.
Where we live in Texas, and I don't want to sound like a sales pitch for the Von Lane service, but there is an executive bus that travels historically between Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, and I think some routes to San Antonio. They have decreased their routes pretty substantially during this time. However, I personally traveled on Von Lane during this time twice to Fort Worth. They've now eliminated the Austin to Fort Worth route, but I felt very safe. The bus was extremely clean. There were very few travelers on the bus. And in the past, before all this started, we have sent our children to visit cousins and visit grandparents on the bus, and they do have a minors type of form that you can fill out. You can send them back and forth. So if you have a possession and access issue, I think right now what they're doing, so between Houston and Dallas, or between Austin and Dallas, so there's a few routes up, I would feel very safe using Vaughn Lane at this time.
Good to know.
So I know another thing specifically that Vaughn Lane is doing is they're not selling any B seats. So you will not be seated next to another person. So they're definitely exercising social distancing. I assume at this point they're wearing face masks. They weren't at the time when I traveled, but there's also food and restrooms on the bus. And so there are no stops being made. So you don't have to worry about stopping at a rest stop and contamination in any places to and from your destination.